I see the history of what Mike and Steve put into Speedway, Sydney Showground, the way they pumped the crowd, pumped the marketing and the audience. Even Liverpool, I believe Liverpool had a bigger stature than what Parramatta did.
Yeah, right.
Yet Parramatta was, in terms of a races facility, 10 times what Liverpool was.
Yeah, okay.
But the crowd, the way they promoted that facility, you would have thought otherwise.
Go, go, go! And you're doing it again! That's a massive crash. And it's happened immediately! This is amazing! Big shot, and it's lights out, and away we go!
Were they promoting Liverpool or Parramatta? Or both?
They were Sydney Showground people, from my recollection, back in the early days.
Yep.
They may have been a bit before that, but that's getting before my time.
Yeah. It's a bit crazy to picture like Speedway in the eastern suburbs all these years later, isn't it? Like, yes, you think about it and you're like, holy shit, like that area is pretty ritzy.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Oh yeah. Plenty of money there.
They like them as sponsors.
They can fund our sport quite nicely.
Race at Allianz Stadium.
I went there a bit as a child, actually my parents used to take me when I was still a baby to Sydney Showground. Of course, I don't remember, but I remember going there in the sedan days with the big Ed Wilbers, the Rodney Combs and those sort of guys. And then you had the Steve Kins, the Doug Wolfgang, sprint car tours. Yeah. Some pretty iconic days at Sydney Showground. I went there as a spectator, but I also went there for the very last midget show that they held.
Yeah,
and it was pretty special because you realise this was something this was the end of an era. Whether the track was a great track or a bad track, by modern standards, it's a terrible track. But when you look at what those guys used to race, the Johnny Stewarts and the Jeff Freemans in those midgets and the Jimmy Aries on the bikes and that track would have been beautiful for them guys. Small cars, really exciting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Did they race sprint cars around there?
They did, yeah.
And it was this year. Was it was just like a one lane track, really? Wouldn't it have been?
It was pretty narrow, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't remember it super well as a spectator.
Yeah.
Because the sprint cars would have stopped there early 80s, maybe.
Yeah.
But in those last couple of shows, they just ran the midgets.
Yeah, okay. Yeah. Just because it is a small track, but yeah,
it's just narrow. It was actually big in terms of size.
Yeah,
but it was so narrow. They needed to grade a whole nother couple of grooves.
Yeah, yeah, right.
Yeah,
and then you were saying about like, do you remember much of Westmead Speedway or not really? Did your dad tell you anything about it? Or anything?
He told me lots of things. He was there on some pretty iconic moments. The day Jeff Freeman left us and things like that. So I think Westmead was the epitome of the 60s.
Yeah.
That's really what it was. It was a cool social Sunday afternoon. Let's go to the Speedway. I'd almost say going to Westmead Speedway, I always, in my mind, is like how I maybe went to the Macca's car park when I was a late teenager.
Yeah. Yeah, right. Wow.
Yeah, it was that kind of that's the feel I get from when I listen to my parents talk about that. Yeah.
And then you obviously did you start in like obviously Johnny and the Manifs gave you a go on sprint cars and whatnot, but for your own family operation, as you were saying downstairs, and we'll get to know each other a bit more.
Yeah.
Did you start it in the midgets? Is that the first like family operation, privateer type of thing, or not really?
No, not really. What happened was I got to a point where I went, I don't have money.
Yeah.
My family doesn't have money. And
you really want to go racing.
I to be honest, I gave up on the dream.
Yeah. Okay.
I pulled the plug. I said, I'm not going to be a racer, so I'm going to be a really good mechanic.
Yeah. And what age was this?
And I was, I don't know, 21-ish, around that sort of age.
Yeah.
When you think about it, what a stupid thing to do, to give up so early. But what I was looking for was something to be successful at that was going to drive me.
Yeah.
Because I've never been the sort of person to do anything by half measures. And if I was going to go racing, I wasn't going to putt around at the back of the field with half the motor of everybody else and half the gear, and then I'm
you just didn't want to be a field filler.
No, I'd be kidding myself.
And you just start thinking in your head, I know I do this through careers. You start wondering about, well, how's that going to pay for this, and where's this going to put this, and then the money always sits in everyone's head because you got to live. So it's that constant. That's another driving factor that sits there too.
It has to. I made a decision to get on with my life. I had. Got married, strangely, at a young age.
Yeah.
I'll leave that there. And, so I took on commitments, and I'm like, I'm going to make something else a success. I started working on my career a bit more and went, well, I can be a mechanic on these cars and learn about them, and I'm a bit of a technical person. So I figured I could do that. And I did that for a few years, 4, 5, 6 years, where I was closely linked to the Madsen family.
Yeah, okay.
And learned a lot of stuff from there, had a lot of exposure to a lot of experiences. But I never quite left that desire to go race.
Yeah.
Or I should say it never left me.
Yeah.
And
I'm shocked how long, obviously being a Speedway fan, how long Kerry and Ian have still been racing in the States even. Do you know what I mean? Like they just managed to just keep that that locomotive going in a way.
They don't have anything else.
Yeah.
They have to.
Yeah, right.
And
yeah, because that's actually interesting you bring that up. You compare to yourself, as you said to Brooke, you have to work hard to literally just race a normal show in Eastern Creek, right? Where they're on that trajectory where they have to just, because you said they've got nothing else.
They don't have anything else. Yeah. And I mean, I'm not close to them guys now. I mean, we say hello and stuff like that, but I certainly don't. I mean, there was a point there where I was like a brother,
Yeah. I
was like the other family member at one point, but it's not like that anymore. But those guys have to race. They don't have trades, careers, anything. I mean, Kerry, if he doesn't, I don't know. I don't want to speak for him, right?
Yeah.
I'm sure he's got lots of nice connections now after many years in the sport that he could move into.
Being like a team manager role or something, or crew chief,
or working for one of the supply companies as an advocate of their product and things like that. So
kind of like what the Dumsies do, but to a lesser extent or something like that. Yeah,
I mean they fund their own stuff.
Yeah,
right? Yeah, they've Max has made that himself.
Yeah,
lots of connections. I'm sure there's lots of help along the way, but he makes a living out of that to fund their racing to a point.
Yeah,
and I think the Madsens are just different. They've relied on rides, but it's tough now. Even in America, you don't just walk out and get a ride. I mean, we've seen how easy it is to lose a ride. We all watch it in the media and so forth.
Because like McFadden loses, like a lot of the boys in the World of Outlaws drop out of rides all the time.
Yeah, look at Brooke Tatnall.
Yeah,
I mean that guy's still a hell of a racer, right? He hasn't had a really good ride for 5 years in the US.
Yeah, what do you reckon his dipping point was though? Because as you said, he was, I think it was mid to 2013, 14. I think he was at his peak essentially with a good ride. What do you reckon was his downfall in the US though? Because it's completely different racing. You know what I mean? Because you've done both.
I haven't done a lot of US.
Yeah.
I've had a couple of dabbles, but I've been over there and travelled a bit, been around it, know a few people around it. I don't know. I think there's a couple of things. One is the desire to travel because you are on the road all the time with that sport. And the other thing is timing. Timing. If there's 50 rides available and you happen to lose your ride and nothing's available, you're forgotten. Yeah. And if you don't
kind of like the Ricardo thing at the moment.
Yeah.
It actually is. It's a lot like that, except the Ricardo thing's obviously a much smaller, tighter pack.
Yeah.
Sprint car racing's had a broader pack.
Yeah.
But you get used to racing at a certain level, or those guys do. Trust me, they're well above where I am.
Yeah.
But they get used to racing at a level. They got a certain level. They got a good mechanic. They got great cars. They got great engines. They got this itinerary of stuff to support them.
Yeah.
And then they're going to go and run for the local guy with one motor and a couple of spare wheels and tires. Yeah. And they say, no, that's not me.
Yeah.
Right. And in their heart of hearts, they want to go and race. I can tell you, these guys are racers.
It's like any athlete, you don't want to drop from a certain level. We even were discussing about Ricardo, Dan and I, the other day, and when I was talking about, Haas-wanting him over there, Gunther and that, but like Dan said, you don't really want to dip out of F1 for any time, so he should just take the seat and not even leave the year. So it's a hard place to be in, but it's like you said, you don't want to drop from this A-grade game down. It's a different level for them when they're there.
Which is what I felt like Brooks done in a way for it, which is why he's still there. But the thing is now he's at that certain level in a certain chassis and car. Do you know what I mean?
Well, I think Brooke now has become more family.
Yeah.
Right. He's really involved in his kids, his daughter with the horses, his son with the go-kart and his wife's health and things like that. And, good on him. Good on him for making that transition from being, let's be honest, we're all selfish racers.
Yeah.
Right?
Brooke has to deal with it every time I go up the track.
Gets to the point where you stand there and go, I want to go now.
Well, when I first met my partner now, we've been together about 17 years.
Yeah.
And she's like, I'm going to be there every week.
Yeah.
I think she's been 3 or 4 times in the last 4 years, something like that. So she's like, nah.
Is she ever been behind the wheel of a race car of any kind?
We've put her in the 2-seater at Parramatta.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and sent her on her way.
Yeah. This is the Triple M one or before that?
I'm not sure. Maybe the Triple M one.
Yeah. Did you get to drive her?
No, I never drove her.
Okay. That would have been cool though.
It would have been, but I never got the opportunity. Sometimes you got to be in the in crowd, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But no, we put her in it and sent her. It was a tyre power car.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, tyre power car. So we sent her on her way, and she comes back in. You could see her eyes were scrambled.
Yeah.
How do you do this? I couldn't tell if I was up, down, sideways, or what was going on. But
that's exactly how I feel when I watch Speedway. It's a dance, so I can understand what she's feeling. I asked that of other drivers we've had on in Speedway. I'm like, how do you stay focused? Like when you're out there, like how do you stay focused going around? Do you have a special thing that you do, or you just go with it?
I don't know what I do.
Yeah,
I just go with it. I mean. There are certain tactics that I try to change. You'll hear somebody say, "Oh, I do this," and you go, "Oh, I've not thought about that. I might, try something." But most of the time, I think I really feel like I live on my peripheral vision, not my focus vision. Mm-hmm. So what's going on around me is what I tend to live on.
Yeah,
and I don't know, instinct takes over. Yeah, you're not quite timing. You're feeling it. I always say to drive these race cars. And again, I'm not one of the best. I'm okay at it. Right?
Oh, come on! You finished top 3 last weekend?
Nah, fourth.
Damn
that podium! But you feel the car.
Yeah.
I don't feel like you don't drive the car. You feel the car.
Yeah.
And you feel a tire slip, or you feel the body roll of the chassis, or something like that, and you're counteracting that for what your knowledge is to go as fast as you can.
Yeah.
And there are times when you are going into a corner and your brain is saying lift, and you're telling yourself some other way. You're telling yourself, no, you're not going to lift. You keep that foot on the floor, buddy, or we're not going anywhere.
Yeah, I tell that with Brooke all the time because Brooke's like, because with road cars, they have problems and stuff like that. She's like, how do you know that something's wrong with the car? I said, through my ass. Like, that's literally the way, literally the way we feel it. You know what I mean?
It is. It is. Absolutely.
But some nights, obviously, as I've learned through Toby with his massive sprint car hub thing going on, the track changes, is it per race that it would change, or every couple of races where it changes?
Every time you go out there, it's different.
Yeah, okay.
And then you got to factor in some promoters like to mess with it.
Oh, really?
Others like to leave it alone. Some like a sprinkle of water, and then they'll grade it, or they'll chop it, or they'll do something. So that's what I love about sprint cars. Well, dirt racing as well.
Yeah. Oh, so you like the kind of spontaneous time you go on the track because you don't know what's going to be out there.
I can't go there on Thursday and spend $1 million practicing, going through 20 sets of tires to find 1.01 of a second.
Yeah, right.
I can go out in qualifying and be a 12 flat, and I go out in the heat race, and I could still be the fastest car on the track, but I'm a 13.0 instead of a 12.0.
Yeah, right.
Because the track has shifted and changed, and what you've got to try and do is understand that type of dirt, and dirt is not dirt.
Yeah.
It all changes, and some keeps moisture, some lets it go, some burns off and goes really hard and abrasive, other just goes hard and slippery. And then you got to try and apply that to some kind of engineering knowledge of how to, what suspension do I put in my car, what shocks, what ride heights, all those sort of combinations.
And the current, and as you were saying downstairs, you essentially, like Mark Haddad, who also came on the podcast, work on the car yourself. So you're literally just trying to guesstimate as you throw stuff into the car, really. Is that what happens?
You are guesstimating all the time. That's all you ever do.
Yeah.
You have notes. It's still you crazy if you don't make notes.
Yeah.
You make notes, you turn up, and you got a bit of a baseline that you work to. And I always say you work left or right of your baseline.
Yeah.
So if the track's going one way, you're heading down the right-hand path. If the track's going the other way, you're heading down the left-hand path. And then you, depending on how financial you are, as to how deep your bag of tricks is, right?
Yeah. Yeah, right. Wow. I find that interesting because before you just said that then, the promoters, how they're changing the surface and just the way they like to do things.
Do they do that day to day on an event? They'll make the changes, or just more upfront and then it is what it is?
No. So if I use last weekend as an example, we turned up and the tracks, that track at Eastern Creek at the moment is super fast. It's actually
too fast.
Yeah.
I said that to Brooke when we
because you don't get to race.
Yeah, okay.
I like to race. I think that's why I've stayed away from circuit stuff, because you tend to, follow and focus on lap time.
Yeah.
Whereas with this sort of sport, you can have a bad lap, and next lap, if you work hard, you can race the guy and put him out of position or whatever.
Yeah. And
it is so fast there at the moment that everybody just drops to the fastest line and follows each other.
Mm.
And so we qualified, I think we were 11.8, something like that. And then our heat race time was a 12.1. So you're talking 0.3 of a second difference, which is not a lot really.
Fuck all that.
That's right. That's right. And the track felt much the same.
Mm.
So then you go into your second round of heats, and the time's still there, but the track was starting to get a bit of a slick groove through the middle, and we were starting to creep towards the infield where there was a bit of moisture, trying to keep our speed up. And then they pulled the grader out and timed it up.
Yeah, right. They just decided to do that.
Timed the track up because the middle groove was starting to go off, and everyone's petrified about dust.
Yeah.
I don't get it why dust is such a big problem here, because I've seen plenty of other racetracks that go slick that don't go dusty, and it's dirt, so you're going to have a little bit, but there's a real, I think racing in city areas is what causes the bigger dust problem.
Yeah, right.
Than maybe regional areas, but they timed this track up, and what they did was they found all the moisture underneath, and they turned the feature race into a motocross track.
Yeah, and that's what happens to it.
and then you're going, well, what do I do? Do I change the car again? Because it was starting to go in a certain direction, the racetrack, and you're starting to get your thought process in that direction as well for what I'm going to do with the car. And then they go and rip it up, and you go, okay, well, wind's blowing that way. That's what I'm going to do.
Want to hear more? Each week we will share the hottest clips from our guest interviews on YouTube. But to hear the full episode, make sure to subscribe or follow us on your favourite podcast platform.